It's my pleasure to welcome a really good friend and someone who is the Wynwood district. We had lunch, I don't know, a month or so ago with a friend who is the president of FIABC France. And while we were at lunch with he and his wife and his son, they said, next we're going to the Wynwood Walls. And I said, how do you know about the Wynwood Walls? And he said, everybody knows about the Wynwood Walls. So just in case you don't, or you wonder how all of that came to be, the best person in the entire world to introduce Wynwood and how it's gotten to be the #2 destination in all of Miami. Please welcome Tony Cho with Metro One Properties.
I guess I'm already mic'd, so I don't need to go and do the whole formality. But Teresa, thank you guys, and thank you for the fabulous job you guys do and the events that you produce. They're really world class, and I've traveled around and have been to many conferences, and I just want to give a round of applause to the Board of Realtors, for the Miami Association of Realtors. You guys do a terrific, terrific job and provide you guys with excellent programming. It's really an honor to be here to talk about something that I'm extremely passionate about, and I've been involved with for almost 16, 17 years, almost my entire career in real estate in Miami. And Wynwood, how many people have been to Wynwood? Raise your hand. Okay, almost the whole room. I think Wynwood, and I was just telling Teresa that Wynwood is now, I think, top 2 or 3 destinations to visit if you're a tourist coming into Miami-Dade County. And I think that that's something that is a real testament to the magic that we've been able to create over there. And Wynwood, you know, what is Wynwood? Let's talk about Wynwood. Wynwood is a district, it's an arts district that's been in the making for the last 30 years or so. So Wynwood, if you don't know where it is or you haven't been there, technically starts in 20th Street to the south and 36th Street to the north, from I-95 to the west, and the rail, which is now going to be the rail that carries all aboard Florida, to the eastern boundaries. And you know, it was primarily a manufacturing district that started in the 50s. And as you guys know, manufacturing has definitely moved out of the United States and definitely into other areas. And so this area was neglected and defunct and was not a place you wanted to be for many, many years. So, you know, Wynwood has really evolved, specifically over the last 5 to 10 years, where it's really changed a lot. And what it's most known for now at this point is basically its street art, and it's become an internationally recognized street art gallery. So if we can get this thing to work, I'm going to show you some pretty pictures and some of the highlights. So, location of Wynwood, as you can see, people asked me, you know, when you started in Wynwood, how did you know it was going to be so fabulous? How did you know it was going to be so great? And I said, I didn't know. I said, but look at the geography, look at the location. We are smack in the middle of Miami, between the Miami International Airport and Miami Beach. And actually, the part of Miami Beach that's now garnering the most recognition, which is Mid-Beach, the Fine Arts District, Soho, all the hotel booms that are happening over there, the Addition, etc. So I knew that, geographically speaking, that Wynwood would be desirable. Bless you. And so I felt that because of the interesting housing stock that was there and the warehouse stock, the old gritty warehouses, because of the location, you had the design district kind of bubbling up at that time, that it was a good place to start trying to create something new. And Wynwood really started, I mean, there's a couple of pioneers, including the Margulies family, who just went there because there were very affordable warehouses to store art, to the Rubels, who have a fabulous art collection there and gallery, who were there in the late 90s, to the Bakehouse, which has been there since the 80s. So you started to have this foundation of art in Miami, which has been a theme and a thread that has been very prominent, I think, in the recent development of Miami as a cultural and arts destination throughout the world. So in this slide, you can see some of the big projects that are happening throughout Wynwood. Then we'll get into some of those details later, but it gives you kind of an overview of the mix between the old adaptive reuse warehouses and the new construction that's about to take place, which has basically we've paved the way through the new zoning code, which I'll talk about in a minute. So let's get into the history of Wynwood a little bit. You can see some of these old pictures kind of illustrate. On the top left, an old Coca-Cola factory. You have an old building that was street art and graffitied, and you have a bunch of industrial, dilapidated buildings that people thought, there was nothing going on. And then when you started to go inside of these buildings, you see the incredible renovations and the finishes that people are doing, and there's this whole culture that has been developing underneath it. And there's a couple of things historically that people may not know about Wynwood that I had the privilege to be part of and help to pioneer. But the Wynwood Arts District in the beginning, which was, probably in the mid-late 90s, played an active role in cultivating galleries and artists to come to the area because there was affordable rent. It's like any arts district. People leave higher priced area like Brickell and Miami Beach or Aventura and look for space, creative space, large space where they can create. They can paint, they can be makers. There's a lot of things that they had the opportunity to do at an affordable price. So by 2000, there were roughly about 40 art galleries, artist workspaces, collections, and then it was coalescing into this association called the Wynwood Arts District, which eventually paved the way for the Business Improvement District and the NRD rezoning, which just took place. So that's kind of, one of the main catalysts. And then, of course, people said, what is the defining element of Wynwood? What makes Wynwood distinctly Wynwood? And I think we can all agree that it's street art. And there's street art all over the world, and it's a form of expression. In other places, graffiti is considered something not nice and not attractive. But Wynwood did the street art thing in such a classy, curated way that it was really treated as a gallery, as an outdoor museum. And I was involved in that whole process. And there was a collective of artists called Primary Projects, where you have Typo and Books and a couple of these local guys who got together and started bringing some of the big names in street art movement to Miami to paint significant walls, and that started garnering a lot of attention. Simultaneously, we saw the advent of social media. And so at the same time as you're seeing this ugly neighborhood being turned beautiful by these internationally renowned artists, and then all of a sudden that being transmitted through social media was kind of a great formula for helping to reinvent that neighborhood. And so Primary Projects played an active role in really making that happen. I was with them to secure them with walls. Everybody wanted a wall. And it was a real coup to get the prominent walls in the best locations with the best artists like the Retinas and the Shepherd Ferries and these guys. And they wanted, if they were going to come there, because often they were doing this for free. And these are artists who are selling their work in other markets in LA and New York and internationally, $50,000 a piece, $100,000 a piece. And we're coming to help create this new neighborhood for free. They were doing it as a favor to their brothers and sisters in the street art movement in Miami. And so Primary Projects played an active role, and they linked up with landlords like Metro One and like Goldman Properties, and we collaborated. We even created these whole legal forms that gave them permission and created a curating process because a lot of the old owners and the original owners in Wynwood didn't know what was the difference between good street art and bad street art. So we kind of all worked together, like in the sense of a museum, and helped to curate some of the art. And today, we're actually creating a funding source so there can be a curator for street art, for property owners in Wynwood. And now, through the NRD rezoning, you actually are required to incorporate art into your new construction buildings and and you're given incentives to help preserve the existing buildings as they are. So there's a lot of, I would say, consensus in the direction and the evolution and the development of Wynwood, which I think is what has really created something unique and special that you don't see in any other neighborhood yet in Miami, and certainly not a lot of other neighborhoods anywhere in the world. So that's something that is really special. So from the Wynwood Arts District, we saw the advent of the Second Saturday's Art Walks, which I'm sure many of you have been to. We're now getting anywhere from 3,000 to 10,000 people on a Saturday night, on the second Saturday, and it's alive. I mean, it's like a street festival. It's like carnival. If you haven't been there, go. It's a lot of fun. All the galleries are open. All the retailers are open. It's very cool. And it's, you know, it's like last night on Lincoln Road for Halloween. It's just completely packed with people having fun, expressing themselves, and it's a really creative experience. So I think that helped bring a lot of attention to the area, because a lot of people didn't know where to get off on the exit on 95. They didn't want to make a wrong turn and end up in a bad neighborhood. And so I think that really helped to boost the confidence of creating a neighborhood. And so all of these are pieces to the puzzle of creating a neighborhood. I think Art Basel played a very important role in putting Wynwood on the map internationally because of the amount of people who come to Wynwood during that period, and because of all the satellite art fairs that happen in Midtown, and because of everything that's going on in the design district. And so I think that really helped put Wynwood more on the map and secure it as a arts destination globally. And I think Art Basel played a role and continues to play a very active role in the development of Wynwood. So from the political process side, because I was very involved, and we actually had some of the first meetings in my office, I think it's 6 or 7 years ago, in the formation of one of Miami's first business improvement districts. So the Wynwood bid was started about 5 years ago, and for those of you who are not familiar with business improvement districts, New York has over 1,000 of them, for example. And this is a mechanism that's quasi-public-private partnership between the property owners and the government, where the group of property owners get together and tax themselves through the property tax system, and they have their own budget and their own funding to allocate to their specific neighborhood. And that was really very instrumental in making change and affecting change in Wynwood, because we were able to hire our own private security, we were able to hire more police officers, we were able to change light bulbs, we were able to hire women from the Lotus House, the women of Wynwood who you see dressed in pink, who went around to keep things clean and safe. And I think that really helped to create an environment that really nurtured safety and a sense of people wanting to visit the neighborhood. So one of the main objectives of the Wynwood bid was to create a zoning in the city of Miami that would help to preserve the character of Wynwood while at the same time promoting development. So how do you, in a neighborhood that's a bunch of warehouses that are painted with street art, with cool independent boutiques, how do you build buildings while preserving the character? So we created a very progressive and unique zoning code called the Wynwood Neighborhood Revitalization District, Wynwood NRD, which was passed last September and has now garnered some of the most important accolades in progressive zoning in the country by ULI and other organizations that focus on urban revitalization. And just to mention a few things that are part of the zoning code, you can build buildings now and buy down the parking to zero if they're 650 square feet or less, which is encouraging more public transportation, paying into parking funds, more pedestrian-friendly environments, more use of sharing services like Uber and Lyft and this type of things. Certainly something that has paved the way for a different type of zoning, and now you're going to start seeing some really interesting projects come of that. We've created a fund for parks and green spaces and civic spaces. We have a parking fund now. We have a bonus system. We've limited height now to a maximum of 8 to 12 stories. We have a public benefits program. And it's really something that's, very unique and unusual throughout the country. And I think it's become a model for other neighborhoods to emulate and really look at why is Wynwood successful. And really Wynwood is in what I call phase 1 of its development, because we finally have a code. Because, as you well know, if you're in real estate, you can't really develop in an you can't develop residential or mixed use successfully in an industrially zoned neighborhood. You just don't have the density, you don't have the right parking, you don't have a lot of the things that you need to develop successfully. So that, I think, was a real win and has been a real strong support system for the Wynwood community. And the bid, was a great thing for all the owners. So that is something that I can happily say I helped to pioneer, was involved in, helped to get the zoning through, and now, as a result, I'm developing projects with that new zoning in mind. So for those of you who have been to Wynwood, I'm sure you've been to the Wynwood walls. The Wynwood Walls is a marvelous example of some of the best street art that we have in the United States that was conceptualized by the late Tony Goldman, who was one of the pioneers of Wynwood, was one of my co-collaborators and a mentor as well to me. Fortunately, he passed away a few years back, but his memory lives on. His daughter Jessica continues to carry the torch, and they're still continuing to do great things in Wynwood. You'll see Retina, Shepherd Ferry, London Police, you'll see Chrome there. So it's really pretty remarkable if you go to the Wynwood Walls, and I think that's where you probably have some of the highest concentration of traffic in Wynwood today, and some of the highest retail rents, which will blow your mind. I mean, you're seeing rents, pushing $100 a foot in a neighborhood that still doesn't have any residential. It's still all destination. The residential's coming, but the traffic is amazing. And we're now, through the bid, doing traffic counts. And I will tell you, the traffic has doubled every 6 months over the last 2 years, the amount of pedestrian traffic. So there's traffic there all the time now. Weekends are super busy. Weekdays are super busy. The retailers are doing tremendous retail sales. So it's really something that's pretty unique and pretty interesting. So let me talk about some of the current projects that have been completed that are also very interesting if you haven't been there. The Wynwood Arcade. The Wynwood Arcade was a project that Metro One helped to market and lease out. East End Capital was the owner. They acquired it in 2014. They hired an architect from New York to develop something that looked like the High Line in a project that resembled that. So you have a roof deck, which is amazing. You have a 7,600 square foot restaurant and 11 retail units, 20,000 feet, 80% leased. You have the Wynwood building, which many of you guys may have gone to. You have Junior and Hatter, which is one of the first hair salons that we moved from South Beach to Wynwood 5 years ago. It's basically fully leased. It's a great mixed-use old manufacturing warehouse that's now retail and office and has a great restaurant in it too, Miam Cafe. 250 Wynwood was one of the most recent developments that Wynwood had. This is a residential project that was a condo sale that sold about 6 months ago to a year. All the units sold, 11 units, ground floor retail. As you can see in this project, the owner, the developer, incorporated street art from different artists in all facets of the building. And these were larger units, which I think is probably atypical for what's going to be built in Wynwood in the future. However, these sold for record prices before the market even hit, its heights, and Wynwood was recognized at probably about $600 a foot. So I think for a market that hadn't been tested, I think this was a real testament to the desire and demand for Wynwood in general. So 250 Wynwood, really interesting project, built under the old zoning, so that's why it didn't have the density that it needed to really have more units or smaller units, but incorporating a lot of the concepts that were championed in Wynwood NRD. So let's talk about the evolution of retail. When I came into the neighborhood, when I came to Wynwood 16 years ago, it was a lot of manufacturing, a lot of shoe people, some rag tenants, fairly unsafe, very desolate, and you had a few galleries and a few collections. Today, we can kind of look at the timeline. We saw, in 2008, Joey's opened, which was one of the first restaurants there, and that created a buzz on 2nd Avenue. Soon thereafter, you saw Panther Coffee, which is one of the most popular places to go in all of Miami and all of South Florida. And now you're seeing, because of the Wynwood brand, just much like a Brooklyn brand or Venice brand, you're seeing Panther Coffee being exported to places like Joe's Stone Crabs and other places is carrying Panther's brewed coffee and manufactured there in Wynwood. And we've kind of created this new concept, which is manufactured-enabled retail, which in most parts of the city doesn't even exist. You can't have your manufacturing side by side with your retail. So that's something that is really kind of promoting the culture of an independent small business. Panther Coffee, I think, was top 10 American Express featured businesses of 2012, 2013. They now have 4 or 5 locations and are expanding, and just bought their first building that they own in Little River, which is another discussion. We can talk about another neighborhood. You saw Wynwood Kitchen and Bar. You saw the Lab Miami, which is a co-working space that has garnered a lot of attention for really trying to incubate technology and innovation and entrepreneurship here in Miami. Wynwood Brewing, and you started seeing breweries come in. In a project I developed, we brought Ducati in. And now you're starting to see regional hit brands like Warby Parker and Shinola and Illesteva coming in that are in Detroit, that are in these aspirational emerging new neighborhoods, and coming in and saying, Wynwood is where I need to be. You had a couple of tenants leave the design district. Scotch and Soda is now opening up. They were next to Michael's, now they're opening up in Wynwood. So I think the landscape of the profile of the people and the tenants that are coming to Wynwood is really evolving and really changing, and it's arriving. And you know, it's great because it's really just phase 0, and people are seeing the tremendous sales that are occurring and the values that are competing with, you know, Miami Beach and Brickell in terms of price per square foot. We just completed a sale a couple weeks ago, $53.5 million for half a block on Northwest 2nd Avenue from a New York group that owns a lot of real estate. And they're just going to renovate their building and do adaptive reuse. And it's going to be a magnificent project called Wynwood Park. And it's going to incorporate a lot of green space, a lot of rooftops, and you know, revitalization projects. So people see that as the experience that the consumer wants. Because as we all know, with the internet, what's happening? Retail's changing. People can get things on Amazon. You can get something very cheap, very quick to your house. So what's going to get you out of your house? You want an experience. And I think that's what Wynwood is delivering. Wynwood's delivering that experience. You're going to go there. You're going to go to Wynwood Walls. You're going to go to the retailers, and you're going to have an experience. And that's what's going to get you to come out and go to that neighborhood. And so I think that's kind of redefining how retail is developed and how it's done. And that's really what I'm focused on. It's not necessarily creating the power centers in suburban America, which has your Subway next to your Starbucks, next to your GameStop, et cetera. That's great. People make money. I'm not going to criticize how things are developed. But when you're looking to create something unique and interesting, you know, you have to create that. It's like curating a piece of art or a gallery. And I think that's really what Wynwood is, and that's what, you know, having, you know, the types of leaders and pioneers who have come together have been able to create and maintain and protect, because you have to protect that too. So let's talk a few numbers. So you guys, I know everybody in real estate is interested in numbers. Currently, there's about 80,000 feet of retail available and ready to be leased. There's about 22,000 square feet in construction. There's another 125,000 planned. And in the past 5 years, which had, I would estimate, half the demand that we're going to have in the next 5 years, 700,000 square feet were absorbed. The potential full development of that neighborhood is almost 9 million square feet. So we believe that the market is very underserved, and you're going to see a lot of retail and mixed-use development happening in the next period. So look out for that. That's going to be exciting. And let's talk about a few key signature projects that are happening in the future and what the Wynwood's future is going to look like. A little snapshot. W House, which some of you might have seen in The Real Deal, and ex-Miami was released. This is a project of 182 micro condos that I'm developing with Related right across from the Rubella collection, which was recently approved, and we plan to go to sales on that. This is a product that we believe that the market will really enjoy and really, you know, eat up, because we're starting at $300,000. So somebody who wants a place in a hip neighborhood for an affordable price, millennials, college students, entrepreneurs, independent people are just coming down and want a pied-à-terre, this is going to be a really interesting option. And for $300,000, you can't get anything else in Wynwood. So this is the type of product, and we believe for urban infill, the area, the average square footage is going to be 500 to 600 square feet. So we can talk about more details afterwards if you want, but that's one project. There's another project called the Wynwood Greenhouse, which is a open-aired greenhouse butterfly and bird sanctuary that I'm developing next to the Ducati building. And this is going to be my public give back to the community. and it's going to be open on regular hours, and it's going to be an example of environmental stewardship. We're going to have students and people from the community coming. We'll do classical music conferences and concerts, and have yoga in the park and all kinds of stuff. So this is going to be something really interesting. We had an international design competition that elicited over 250 applications from 23 countries, and a local group actually won the design. So we've been in design and engineering for the last 2 years to come out with this, and we just submitted plans to the city, so we hope to be in construction by the first quarter of next year, and that will be a nice, really nice addition to the neighborhood. So stay tuned for that. And how many minutes I got? 1 minute left? Okay. I'm being told that we have to wrap it up. So there's a few projects that are also coming into the market, which are, probably total about 1,000 units, and they're all urban of nature, mixed use of nature, and all incorporate street art. And I'm really happy to see the neighborhood going to the next level, and really happy to be involved and help to have pioneered this neighborhood, and looking to help preserve its character moving forward, and hopefully do other neighborhoods like this, because we think it has a lot of value and creates a lot of pride for our city. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'll answer any questions afterwards. Thank you.